With every passing day, the Democratic Party reveals what its true intentions are. Though they claim to be the party of science and facts, their advocacy and voting patterns show they're anything but. Yesterday, the Senate voted on a bill that would require a doctor to use all of his skills to preserve the life of a child born alive after an attempted abortion. The bill came in reaction to grisly, macabre efforts in New York, Virginia, and elsewhere to essentially legalize infanticide. Governor Ralph Northam of Virginia specifically verbally supported efforts to legalize it, so Trump called him out during the State of the Union.
We had the case of the governor of Virginia where he stated he would execute a baby after birth. To defend the dignity of every person, I am asking Congress to pass legislation to prohibit the late-term abortion of children.
Well, there was essentially little to no response from the Democrats in the room. Stone-faced Nancy just sat there. Well, the Senate attempted yesterday to do something about this Democrat embrace of infanticide and hold doctors accountable.
So my colleagues across the aisle need to decide where they'll take their cues on these moral questions. On the one hand, there are a few extreme voices who've decided that some newborn lives are more disposable than others. On the other side is the entire rest of the country.
I want to ask each and every one of my colleagues whether or not we're okay with infanticide. This language is blunt. I recognize that, and it's too blunt for many people in this body. But frankly, that is what we're talking about here today.
Now, in the end, all but 3 Democrats voted against permitting the bill to proceed. Shameless. Every one of the announced 2020 Democratic presidential candidates voted no. Senators Gillibrand, Booker, Harris, Klobuchar, Warren, and Bernie Sanders voted to support the wanton extermination of children already born. Along with Planned Parenthood, they claim that the bill would limit reproductive rights. And in the words of Senator Patty Murray,
it's a vote on yet another attack from our Republican colleagues on women's health and their right to access safe, legal abortion, this time in the form of an anti-doctor, anti-woman, anti-family piece of legislation.
Nice try, Patty. Anti-doctor, anti-woman, anti-family. Family usually requires a child, and infanticide usually requires the taking of a child's life, doesn't it? And what Murray didn't mention is that she and her party's opposition to this common sense bill is itself anti-science. We have a viable child that has been born. In what way is it anti-woman or anti-family to protect the life of that child? It's craziness. Now, the president correctly summarized the vote in a pair of tweets yesterday. The Democrat position on abortion is now so extreme that they don't mind executing babies after birth. This will be remembered as one of the most shocking votes in the history of Congress. But, my friends, once a party embraces this nihilism, this dark religion, by treating abortion itself like a sacrament, all reason goes out the window. What happened to safe, legal, and rare? Their unwavering defense of abortion on demand, even if it leads to infanticide or, well, let's say, the embrace of other issues like gender fluidity, even if that leads to rank unfairness. We're going to get to that issue later on in the show. It's akin to a secular Sharia law among the left. You deviate from what the social justice warriors stipulate today, and they'll decapitate you in the workplace and in school if they have their way. These people are fanatics. They're zealots, hell-bent on a complete upending of the social order and an upending of just about everything that embodies or even comes close to embodying tradition. Leftist icon, feminist Gloria Steinem was on the Today Show promoting a book of old essays. One in particular, written in the 1980s, suggested that the Republican Party and Hitler's views had a lot in common.
On a more serious note, to put it mildly, is why Hitler was actually elected, and he was elected, and he campaigned against abortion. I mean, he padlocked the family planning clinics. Okay, so that is still relevant in terms of the right wing.
Well, I'm afraid Gloria is getting a bit dotty in her old age. She essentially is arguing that in order to save humanity, you have to kill off more humans. And notice how Steinem practices the art of self-projection. Hitler, just like Planned Parenthood, practiced and defended mass extermination, all in the name of racial purity, which is exactly what the founder of Planned Parenthood believed. Margaret Sanger believed deeply in eugenics. Check out this article from 1926 about Sanger's advocacy for birth control clinics. She said, "We want a world freer, happier, cleaner. We want a race of thoroughbreds." It shouldn't surprise you that Sanger established her first full-service clinic in Harlem in 1930. Well, why Harlem? Well, as the Washington Times explains, that's where a lot of the black people she often referred to as human weeds lived. Sanger described it as an experimental clinic established for the benefit of colored people. Well, for her, the word benefit really just meant elimination. And in her infamous letter to Clarence Gamble of Procter & Gamble, it was about the need to use the cover of ministers to set up these clinics. She wrote to him, "The most successful educational approach to their population is through a religious appeal. We don't want the word to get out that we want to exterminate the Negro population, and the minister is the man who can straighten out that idea if it should occur to their more rebellious members." Can you believe that was written? The left then, and the left today, has this insatiable appetite for this death culture, which, by the way, reminds me of another baby story.
What have you done to it? What have you done to its eyes?
He has his father's eyes.
What have you done to him, you maniac?
Satan is his father, not Guy.
The left's dogmatic adherence to their dark gospel means they'll never disavow this undeniable racist or purge her from their history. New York even named a street after Sanger. Yeah, it's called Margaret Sanger Way. And it's not just the old war horses of the left preaching this deadly creed. The young upstarts have joined the congregation, even when cooking alone in an empty apartment.
There's scientific consensus that the lives of children are going to be very difficult, and it does lead, I think, young people to have a legitimate question. You know, is it okay to still have children?
Wait a second. The lives of children are going to be very difficult. Sure are if they're not born. What? Scientific consensus? It's called eventual human extinction, Professor. And for people who claim to be concerned about being on the right side of history, they seem to be running in the opposite direction. NBC reported on millennials who just say no to babies. They did it last month.
I think I just had a lot of other aspirations in mind. Babies are a lot of work, and I wasn't really willing to take on half that work.
Well, and no repercussions for that type of thinking, right?
Some say it puts our country in jeopardy of not having a strong enough workforce in the years to come. Another possible impact, though, we risk having fewer people to help care for the nation's growing elderly population.
But who cares about them? I'm not sure Margaret Sanger would care much about them. They're disposable as well. Those old people will have robots to feed them by then, right? Oh, come on, please. But there is some sunshine in the forecast, my friends. A new Marist poll finds that after a 17-point gap last month, Americans are now just as likely to identify as pro-life as pro-choice. And Democrats are where the movement is happening. Last month, 20% of Democrats claimed to be pro-life. This month, that number is up to 34%. Massive increase. And Americans are overwhelmingly believing that third trimester abortions should be outlawed. 71 to 25%. The poor people in the 25%, but we'll pray for them. Now, the left, blinded by their dogmatic attachment to abortion, can't see that Americans don't want what they're selling. If AOC really wanted to be edgy, she'd couple her love of creation and all things green with a love of life and defending the most defenseless. And that's the angle.